Have you ever walked away from a conversation replaying every word in your mind, wishing you had said something different? Or perhaps you've stayed awake at night because someone misunderstood you, ignored you, or treated you unfairly. It feels almost impossible not to react. We defend ourselves, we explain, we argue, we search for the perfect words that will finally make others understand us. Yet somehow the more we speak, the less at peace we become. Most people believe that strength means having the right answer, winning every argument, or never allowing anyone to think they've lost. But what if that belief is quietly stealing your peace? What if every unnecessary reaction is not protecting your dignity, but giving away a part of it? The strongest people rarely feel the need to prove themselves. They don't rush to defend every accusation, respond to every insult, or justify every decision. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's a choice. A choice that comes from understanding something most people spend their entire lives missing. The Stoics discovered this truth more than 2,000 years ago. They understood that suffering doesn't begin with what happens to us. It begins with the meaning we attach to what happens. The moment we believe that our peace depends on controlling other people's opinions, changing the past, or predicting the future, we hand over the only thing that truly belongs to us, our inner freedom. This video isn't about becoming cold, emotionless, or distant. It's about discovering why some people remain calm while everything around them falls into chaos. It's about learning how to stop wasting energy on battles that can never be won and start investing that energy where it has always mattered most, your own mind. By the end of this journey, you may not see silence the same way again. You may realize that speaking less has never been about saying fewer words. It's about becoming someone whose peace no longer depends on being heard, understood, or approved by the world. Why we feel forced to react. Think about the last time someone criticized you unfairly. Maybe it was a coworker who questioned your abilities, a family member who misunderstood your intentions, or a stranger whose opinion lingered in your mind far longer than it should have. What was your first instinct? For most people, the answer is immediate. Explain yourself. Defend yourself. Correct them. Prove them wrong. It feels natural because the human mind interprets social rejection as a threat. Long before modern society, being excluded from the group could mean losing protection, food, and even survival. Although the world has changed, our nervous system still reacts as if every criticism, every insult, and every misunderstanding is a danger that must be eliminated immediately. This is why a single comment can occupy your thoughts for hours, while dozens of compliments are forgotten within minutes. It's why silence often feels uncomfortable. When someone attacks our image, we instinctively believe we must restore it. The Stoics observed this pattern centuries before psychology gave it a name. They realized that people are not disturbed by events themselves, but by the judgments they make about those events. An insult is only a sound, until your mind decides it is an attack on your worth. A disagreement is only a difference in perspective until you interpret it as a personal defeat. The tragedy is that many people spend their entire lives reacting automatically, believing they are defending themselves while they are actually becoming prisoners of every opinion they encounter. Each reaction strengthens the illusion that peace depends on changing someone else's mind. But what if the real prison isn't criticism? What if it's the belief that you must answer every criticism? The strongest people understand something that changes everything. Not every battle deserves your attention, because every unnecessary reaction has a hidden cost. It consumes your focus, your emotional energy, and your ability to think clearly. Every moment spent trying to control another person's perception is a moment stolen from the only thing you can truly govern, your own character. This is where the Stoic journey begins, not by asking, "How can I make them understand me?" but by asking a far more powerful question: "Why do I need their understanding in order to feel at peace?" That single question has the power to expose the invisible chains that keep so many people emotionally dependent on circumstances they were never meant to control. The hidden cost of talking too much. Most people think they speak because they have something important to say. But if we're honest, that's rarely the real reason. We explain ourselves because we fear being misunderstood. We defend ourselves because we fear being judged. We argue because we fear appearing weak. And sometimes we keep talking because silence forces us to face emotions we'd rather avoid. This is one of the greatest illusions of modern life, the belief that if we can just find the right words, we can control how other people see us. We rehearse conversations in our minds, replay arguments long after they've ended, and imagine clever responses that would finally make someone recognize our value. Yet no matter how convincing our explanation may be, we can never control another person's interpretation. That realization can feel unsettling at first. We spend years believing that our peace depends on being understood, appreciated, or treated fairly. But the Stoics challenged this assumption completely. They understood that trying to control another person's opinion is like trying to control the wind. You may exhaust yourself chasing it, but it will always move according to forces beyond your reach. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that every person sees the world through the lens of their own experiences, fears, desires, and beliefs. When someone judges you unfairly, they are not revealing who you are. They are revealing how they see the world. Once you understand this, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop treating every criticism as a verdict on your character. Think about how much energy is lost every day in invisible conversations. Conversations that never actually happen, but continue inside your mind. You imagine defending yourself against someone who isn't even present. You relive moments from weeks, months, or even years ago, wishing you had said something different. The body cannot distinguish between an argument happening in front of you and one happening inside your imagination. Your heart races, your muscles tense, stress hormones rise, all because your mind refuses to let go of something it cannot change. This is why emotional exhaustion often has little to do with the events themselves. It comes from resisting them long after they've already passed. The Stoics recognized that words have power, but they also understood that unnecessary words often reveal inner conflict. A person who is deeply secure doesn't feel compelled to justify every choice. They don't chase validation because their self-worth isn't built on someone else's approval. Silence, in this sense, isn't the absence of communication. It's evidence that your inner stability no longer depends on winning every conversation. This doesn't mean you should never speak. Stoicism is not passive acceptance of injustice, nor is it an invitation to suppress your voice. There are moments when speaking is an act of courage, but there is an equally important wisdom in knowing when words will only feed conflict instead of resolving it. Before responding to criticism, ask yourself a simple question: am I speaking to express the truth? Or am I speaking because I need to control what someone else thinks of me? That single moment of reflection can reveal the hidden motivation behind countless reactions. More often than not, you'll discover that the strongest response isn't the quickest one. It's the one chosen with clarity instead of emotion. The less your peace depends on being understood by everyone, the more freedom you quietly reclaim. The Stoic principle that changes everything. Control what is yours. Imagine carrying 2 heavy bags every single day. One contains everything that truly belongs to you: your thoughts, your choices, your character, your actions, and the meaning you give to your experiences. The other is filled with everything that was never yours to carry: other people's opinions, the economy, the past, the future, luck, rejection, aging, illness, and every unexpected event life places in your path. Most people spend their lives trying to lift the second bag. They wake up worried about what others might think. They replay conversations that cannot be changed. They fear futures that haven't arrived. They try to predict every possible outcome, believing that enough preparation can eliminate uncertainty. Without realizing it, they devote their greatest energy to things that have never obeyed their will. The Stoics saw this as the root of emotional suffering. Epictetus expressed it with remarkable simplicity. Some things are within our control and some are not. At first glance, the idea almost seems too obvious to change a life. Yet if you stop and examine your daily worries, you'll notice that most of them belong to the second category. Can you control whether someone appreciates your kindness? No. Can you control whether people misunderstand your intentions? No. Can you control whether life unfolds exactly as you planned? No. Can you control how another person chooses to treat you? No. But you can always control something that is infinitely more valuable. You can choose whether resentment becomes your identity. You can decide whether criticism shapes your self-worth. You can determine whether disappointment hardens your heart or strengthens your character. This is the dichotomy of control, and it is far more than a philosophical concept. It is a practical filter through which every difficult moment can be examined. Picture someone insulting you. The insult itself is outside your control. Their personality is outside your control. Their emotional state is outside your control. Their opinion of you is outside your control. But your interpretation of those words, your response, and the person you become afterward remain entirely within your control. Most people reverse this equation. They sacrifice control over themselves in a desperate attempt to gain control over others. They lose sleep over conversations they cannot rewrite. They surrender today's peace to fears about tomorrow. They become emotionally dependent on circumstances that change from one moment to the next. The Stoic does the opposite. Instead of asking, "How do I make life obey my expectations?" as they ask, "How do I remain faithful to my principles regardless of what life brings?" That question changes everything. Because once you stop demanding certainty from an uncertain world, anxiety begins to lose its foundation. You no longer need every door to open. You no longer need everyone to approve of you. You no longer need every plan to succeed. Your stability comes from something far more reliable, knowing that no matter what happens outside you, your next decision is still yours. This is not passive resignation. It is the highest form of personal responsibility. It shifts your attention away from endless frustration and back to the only place where genuine freedom has ever existed, your own mind. The irony is that the moment you stop trying to control everything, you begin to experience a kind of peace that control itself could never give you. Silence is not weakness, it's emotional discipline. Why does silence make so many people uncomfortable? Because silence cannot be easily interpreted. It leaves room for uncertainty, and the human mind dislikes uncertainty. When someone criticizes us and we don't respond, many assume we've been defeated. When we're insulted and remain calm, others may think we have nothing to say. But what if the opposite is true? What if the person who doesn't react is the only one who is truly in control? Society has conditioned us to admire immediate responses. We're taught to have the perfect comeback, to defend our reputation, to make sure no one has the last word. Social media has amplified this instinct, rewarding speed over wisdom and reaction over reflection. The faster you respond, the more engaged you appear. The louder you are, the more visible you become. But visibility and strength are not the same thing. The Stoics understood something that modern culture often forgets. Every reaction is a decision, and decisions made in the heat of emotion are rarely the ones we admire later. Think back to the moments you regret most. How many began with words spoken too quickly? An angry message sent without thinking? A conversation that escalated because neither person was willing to pause? An argument that damaged a relationship more than the original disagreement ever could? In almost every case, the problem wasn't that you spoke. It was that emotion spoke before reason had the chance. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that another person's behavior could never force him to abandon his own character. This is one of the most powerful ideas in Stoicism. No insult, betrayal, or act of disrespect has the ability to control your response unless you silently give it permission. This is what emotional discipline really means. It is not suppressing anger. It is not pretending pain doesn't exist. It is not becoming indifferent to injustice. Emotional discipline is creating enough space between what happens and how you respond that your values, not your impulses, make the final decision. That space is where freedom lives. Most people believe freedom means doing whatever they feel like doing. The Stoics believed the opposite. They argued that a person controlled by every emotion, every desire, every fear, and every impulse is not free at all. They are being led through life by forces they have never learned to govern. Imagine someone trying to provoke you. Perhaps they raise their voice. They accuse you unfairly. They hope you'll lose your temper because emotional reactions are predictable. Once they control your emotions, they begin to influence your behavior. Now imagine something different. You listen, you breathe, you notice the anger rising within you, but instead of obeying it, you observe it. You recognize that anger is asking for immediate action, but reason quietly asks a better question. Will this response make tomorrow better, or only satisfy today's emotion? That single pause changes everything. The person trying to provoke you expects resistance. They expect excuses. They expect retaliation. What they rarely expect is someone whose peace is no longer available for negotiation. Silence, in moments like these, is not surrender. It is evidence that you have stopped allowing other people's behavior to dictate your inner world. This is why the strongest people often say less. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand that every unnecessary word risks placing their emotional state back into someone else's hands. Real strength isn't measured by how effectively you can silence another person. It's measured by how completely you refuse to let another person's chaos become your own. And when you finally understand this, silence stops feeling like weakness. It becomes one of the clearest expressions of inner freedom. Why acceptance gives you more freedom, not less. For many people, acceptance sounds like surrender. It sounds like giving up, like lowering your standards, like allowing life to happen without resistance. But that is one of the greatest misunderstandings about Stoicism. The Stoics never taught people to become passive. They taught them to stop wasting their strength, fighting battles that reality had already decided. There is an enormous difference between accepting reality and approving of it. You don't have to like what happened. You don't have to pretend that loss doesn't hurt. You don't have to celebrate disappointment, betrayal, illness, or failure. Acceptance simply means recognizing one undeniable truth. Reality exists independently of your opinion about it. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, shouting at the wind to stop. No matter how sincere your frustration is, the storm doesn't listen. Now imagine taking that same energy and using it to find shelter, protect yourself, and decide your next move. The storm hasn't changed, but your relationship with it has. That is exactly what the Stoics meant by accepting fate. Marcus Aurelius understood that every event, pleasant or painful, became part of the material from which character is built. He didn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, he asked, "What kind of person can I become because this has happened?" That question shifts your attention from resistance to responsibility. Most emotional suffering doesn't come from the event itself. It comes from the endless argument we have with reality. This shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have treated me this way. My life was supposed to look different. I can't move forward until things go back to the way they were. These thoughts feel reasonable because they reflect our deepest wishes, but they also trap us in a battle that can never be won. The past cannot negotiate. Reality cannot be persuaded. The more we demand that life rewrite itself, the more powerless we become. This is why anxiety often grows stronger when we refuse to accept uncertainty. The mind starts trying to predict every possible danger, believing that enough planning can eliminate pain. It searches endlessly for guarantees that life has never promised. But the Stoics discovered something liberating. Peace is not found by making the future certain. Peace is found by becoming capable of facing an uncertain future. This is the heart of amor fati, the love of fate. Not because every event is pleasant, but because every event contains an opportunity to practice wisdom, courage, justice, or self-control. Every obstacle becomes training. Every disappointment becomes perspective. Every delay becomes patience. Every failure becomes instruction. When you begin seeing life this way, something remarkable happens. You stop asking whether every experience is good or bad. Instead, you ask whether you're using it well. That subtle change transforms your entire relationship with adversity. You no longer measure life by how comfortable it is. You measure it by how faithfully you live according to your principles. Ironically, this makes you far more resilient, because when your peace no longer depends on perfect circumstances, life loses one of its greatest weapons against you. Acceptance doesn't weaken your spirit. It frees it from fighting impossible battles. And once that energy is no longer consumed by resisting reality, it becomes available for something far more meaningful, living wisely within it. How reason calms emotional chaos. Have you ever noticed how emotions always demand an immediate answer? Anger says, "Reply now." Fear says, "Imagine everything that could go wrong." Anxiety whispers, "If you don't solve this immediately, something terrible will happen." Pride insists, "Don't let them get away with that." Every powerful emotion carries the same hidden message: act before you think. This is why emotional chaos feels so overwhelming. It doesn't simply influence your thoughts, it accelerates them. Your mind jumps from one possibility to another, creating stories that feel completely real, even when they are built on assumptions rather than facts. A single unanswered message becomes proof that someone is losing interest. One mistake at work suddenly means your career is falling apart. A moment of uncertainty turns into a future filled with imagined disasters. The mind is remarkably creative when it is afraid. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience explained how the brain responds to perceived threats. They knew that the first impression your mind creates is not always the truth. It is only an impression. Epictetus taught that the moment between an event and your judgment is where your freedom exists. That moment is often incredibly small, sometimes only a single breath. But within that breath lies the difference between a life ruled by emotion and a life guided by reason. Imagine someone speaking to you with disrespect. Your first emotional impulse arrives almost instantly. Your heart beats faster. Your body prepares for conflict. Your mind begins constructing a response before the other person has even finished speaking. Most people believe this first reaction is who they are. The Stoics disagreed. They believed your first emotional response is automatic. Your second response is your character. That distinction changes everything. Because if your first thought is not entirely under your control, your second thought almost always is. Instead of asking, "How do I stop feeling angry?" the Stoic asks, "What is this anger trying to convince me of?" Instead of assuming every emotion deserves obedience, they examine it. Is this fear based on reality? Or is it based on imagination? Is this anger protecting my values, or only protecting my ego? Is this anxiety preparing me for action, or trapping me inside possibilities that may never exist? Reason doesn't silence emotion. It questions it. It separates facts from interpretations. It asks whether your mind is responding to reality or to a story it has invented. This is one of the greatest mental disciplines you can develop. Not because it removes difficult emotions, but because it prevents those emotions from becoming your identity. Marcus Aurelius practiced this relentlessly. Whenever he encountered frustration, betrayal, or disappointment, he reminded himself that events are objective. It is our judgment that turns them into suffering. This doesn't mean pain disappears. It means pain no longer decides who you become. Picture your emotions as waves on the surface of the ocean. Some are gentle, others arrive like violent storms. Most people spend their lives trying to stop the waves. The Stoic learns something different. He learns to become the ocean beneath them. The surface may continue to move, but beneath it there is depth, stillness, and stability. Reason creates that depth, not by making life easier, but by making you less dependent on every emotional current that passes through your mind. And once you realize that you can observe your emotions without obeying them, you discover a freedom that no circumstance can take away. What truly strong people do differently. Strength is one of the most misunderstood qualities in the modern world. We often mistake confidence for loudness. We confuse dominance with leadership. We admire people who always have the last word, who never admit mistakes, who seem impossible to challenge. But appearances can be deceptive. Many of the people who look the strongest are actually fighting invisible battles inside themselves. Every argument they win gives them temporary relief, but never lasting peace. Every compliment becomes something they need again tomorrow. Every criticism feels like an attack on their identity. Their confidence depends on circumstances they cannot control. Stoicism offers a completely different definition of strength. A strong person is not someone who controls other people. A strong person is someone who cannot be easily controlled by them. Imagine two people receiving the exact same insult. The first reacts immediately. His voice becomes louder. His emotions take over. Hours later, he's still replaying the conversation, imagining better responses and wishing he could change what happened. The second person hears the same words. He notices the emotional reaction inside himself. He feels the sting. He feels the impulse to respond. But instead of acting automatically, he pauses. He asks himself a simple question: does this deserve my peace? Sometimes the answer is yes. If a response is necessary to protect a principle, establish a boundary, or defend someone vulnerable, he speaks with clarity. But if the only thing being threatened is his ego, he lets the moment pass. Not because he's weak, because he understands the difference between protecting his character and protecting his pride. That distinction changes every relationship. Strong people don't need to win every disagreement because they understand that not every disagreement deserves to become a battle. They don't feel compelled to convince everyone. They don't measure their value by how many people agree with them. They know that being misunderstood is uncomfortable, but losing yourself in the attempt to be understood is far worse. Notice how emotionally resilient people behave during uncertainty. When plans fall apart, they adapt instead of panicking. When someone disappoints them, they acknowledge the pain without allowing bitterness to define them. When success arrives, they enjoy it without becoming dependent on it. When failure comes, they learn without turning it into an identity. Their emotional stability doesn't come from having an easier life. It comes from practicing the same principle repeatedly until it becomes part of who they are. They return their attention to what they can control, again and again and again. This doesn't mean they never experience fear. They do. It doesn't mean they never feel anger. They do. It doesn't mean they never question themselves. They do. The difference is that emotions become visitors rather than rulers. Fear is allowed to speak, but not to make decisions. Anger is acknowledged, but not obeyed. Doubt is examined, but not automatically believed. This is what self-mastery looks like in everyday life. Not perfection, not emotional numbness, but the quiet ability to remain faithful to your values, even when your emotions invite you to abandon them. Perhaps this is why truly strong people often seem so calm. They've stopped believing that every feeling requires action. They've learned that character is built in the small moments no one applauds. The moment you choose patience over impulse. The moment you choose understanding over resentment. The moment you choose silence over proving yourself. These choices rarely attract attention, but over time, they create something infinitely more valuable than admiration. They create a person who no longer needs the world to be predictable in order to remain at peace. Practice silence before life forces. You too. There is a lesson that life teaches everyone. The only difference is whether we choose to learn it willingly or are forced to learn it through suffering. Some people spend decades believing they can control how others see them. They chase approval, avoid conflict at any cost, explain themselves endlessly, and carry the exhausting responsibility of keeping everyone happy. Then one day, despite all their effort, they are criticized anyway. They are rejected anyway. They lose someone they loved. A plan falls apart. Life reminds them, as it reminds all of us, that control has always been far more limited than we imagined. Others begin practicing this lesson long before hardship demands it. They train themselves to pause before reacting, to observe before judging, to accept before resisting. Not because life becomes easier, but because they understand that character is built before the storm arrives, not during it. This is why Stoicism is often misunderstood. People think it exists to help us survive difficult moments, but Stoicism was never meant to be used only in moments of crisis. It is a daily discipline. Every conversation becomes practice. Every inconvenience becomes practice. Every disappointment becomes practice. Every unexpected delay, every criticism, every misunderstanding. Every moment in which your emotions invite you to surrender your peace becomes another opportunity to strengthen the only part of your life that truly belongs to you. Imagine waking up tomorrow with a single intention: not to make people agree with you, not to avoid discomfort, not to control every outcome, simply to protect your own character. Throughout the day, People will behave exactly as people do. Some will disappoint you. Some will misunderstand you. Some will be impatient. Some will be unfair. The world will continue to be unpredictable. But instead of asking, how do I change all of this, you begin asking, what kind of person will I choose to be in the middle of all this? That question quietly transforms every experience, because your attention no longer follows every external event. It returns home, to your choices, to your values, to your reason, to your peace. This is the freedom Epictetus spoke about, not freedom from pain, not freedom from loss, not freedom from uncertainty, but freedom from becoming a prisoner of every event that happens around you. And perhaps that is what true strength has always meant. Not the ability to silence others, but the ability to remain inwardly steady while the world grows loud. So the next time you feel the urge to defend yourself immediately, the next time you feel anxious about a future you cannot predict, the next time someone's opinion begins to occupy more space in your mind than it deserves, pause. Take one slow breath. Then ask yourself the question that has guided Stoics for centuries. Is this within my control? If the answer is yes, act with courage. If the answer is no, release it with dignity. That single habit will not change the world around you. It will change the way you move through it. And over time, you'll discover something remarkable. The strongest people do not say less because they have less to offer. They say less because they have learned that peace is too valuable to spend on battles that were never theirs to fight. If this reflection resonated with you, carry one idea with you today. Every time you choose reason over impulse, acceptance over resistance, and character over ego, you are becoming the kind of person no circumstance can easily break. The world may never become fully predictable, but your mind can become a place of stability within it. And that is a strength no one can take away.